What's going on, wrestling fans? Welcome to the Tapped In Indie Wrestling Podcast, part of the Tapped Out Wrestling Podcast Network. I'm your host, Heath Mulligan, joined as always as the man who makes the drives, the man who controls the controls, Nick McDaniel. Nick, how are you this fine morning?
Dude, I'm good. It's a doubleheader weekend for shows. It's always a blast. Got to experience them two different ways. I may even dive into that, the differences of one show with Myron, one show with the wife, two different things. And and we had a special third member at the Wrestle America show on Saturday. So it just always makes it more interesting when you have other perspectives when you're looking at wrestling shows.
That's right, fans. And if you want to make sure that you stay on top of where we're going, where we're at, behind the scenes stuff, you need to check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/tappedoutpod. But also, you got to go on that YouTube. You got to hit the subscribe button. You got to hit that like button. And then ding, 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 you got to hit that bell. You got to turn on those notifications. You never know when we're going to be putting out bonus content. And if you are a member, you get all the shows early. What better way? Maybe that's not your thing. Maybe you're an audio person. We got you covered. Everywhere you can listen to audio podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts. Is there a Google Podcast? There used to be. Amazon Music, iHeartRadio. Fans, a loaded show today. It was a busy weekend. We're going to jump right into this week's Indy Rewind. Nick, you mentioned it being a doubleheader weekend. You guys headed down to Canton for Southern Honor Wrestling. Unfortunately, I was not able to make this show. How were things down in Canton on Friday night?
Really good show. Obviously the big thing is Rumblejack's coming in August 9th to be specific. So a lot of, there are shows that we tell people all the time that are like, this is the setup show. Like, it's the go home show of Raw and Smackdown heading into a pay-per-view, like those type of things. And they did that here. They were setting up a lot of those pieces along the way. But look, there was a little reflection. We got the hierarchy celebration at the beginning, the Murder Joe, and they was funny because here's what the Rumblejack does. You've got this cohesive team. They're all, they're brothers, that kind of thing. But Murder makes some jokes and is like, I don't forget last year, Joe, that you dumped me over the top rope. So if I get the chance, I'm going to dump you over the top, and then Kenway's like, well, I'm going to do the same. So that's what Rumblejack, like the Royal Rumble, teases those aspects. We're brothers, we're partners, we're friends. But, we're all out to be champion, and it's every man for himself in the Rumblejack, hypothetically.
Well, speaking of it being every man for himself, Gary Lamb came out and he named Zach Mosley and Pepper Bottom as entrants 1 and 2 in the Rumblejack, and said, if you don't wrestle, you're both going to be banned from Southern Honor for life. And that feud just continues to go between Exotic Youth and Gary Lamb.
Yeah, and there was a video sent in. Zach Mosley had words for Gary, on there. Basically, look, he's this thing's far from over. Let's go with it. I mean, that's just it's blatantly obvious. This thing's far from over. But the interesting piece of Zach and Pep have to actually wrestle. They actually have to fight. By the way, that wasn't the end of the unique twist of, he's like, I've got a big giant surprise for number 3, but he didn't give it away. He's like, you're going to have to find out who number 3 is. You got to show up to see who that is. And that, we off air, like, we're throwing some theories around who could it be, who might it be. It's an odd twist for Zach and Pep. For one, I'm going to back up to that. Them having to wrestle is just going to be odd in itself. But then, do you go all out? Because what's coming out at number 3? If you
right.
If you beat each other down, then what? So that's the mystery question.
So What if, and I don't want to throw out a booking idea. I don't want to ruin a surprise if this is what they do, but what's to keep these two guys from just holding a headlock for the first 5 minutes of this match? Technically, they'd be wrestling. Uh, listen, there's a gazillion ways they could go with that. So
let me say this, and look, I get it. People don't like exotic youth. They don't like Zach. They don't like Pep.
Right.
Zach's a smart guy. Pep's a smart guy. And like I said, there's a lot of things, and I think that's it. Shoot him off, grab him in a headlock, grab him in a rear chin lock. I mean, technically you're wrestling.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think don't ever underestimate the exotic youth. They will find, if anybody can find a loophole in anything, it's Zach, it's Pep and Bryce when they're all, as a unit there. So I wouldn't put anything past them. That's for sure.
It's definitely going to be interesting. The Grapplers were able to retain the Southern Honor Tag Team titles. What was it like, Dave Stage and Cody Fluffman in their first time teaming together? Fluff Stash is what they're being called. What kind of chemistry did that team have on the first time out?
So they had lots. I was really surprised at how, good of a team they were, considering probably like there's not a lot of history there with them. Who that says more about, I'm not sure. But clearly it says a lot about both. And Dave Stage. So I saw Dave Stage early. I mean, early in the game, and I really like the new presentation.
Mm-hmm.
The gear, look, everybody's like, oh, it's very Ultimate Warrior like. Okay, what's wrong with that?
Right.
There ain't nothing wrong with that in the least, dude. It's a really good package that he has going now, and so I think he's got he's looks like $1 million. So that there's a lot to go for that. And I've heard tell we're going to see him at a few other promotions, new promotions coming up. I don't want to spoil it because I can't remember if he's on the posters yet or not, but yeah, so I'm really excited to see what Dave Stage has, in store for him in the future.
There kind of was a theme. You mentioned that celebration from the hierarchy. They took on Alexander Lev's group, and then they mixed it up again after the Grapplers match. But a lot of great matches on this card. You had a debuting in Southern Honor, Zach Buchanan, who just graduated from high school. Pull back the curtain a little bit. Defeated Sal Renaro in his first match at Southern Honor, and it sounds like Zach Buchanan got some rave reviews.
So, again, we'll pull it back a little bit. Bull Buchanan's kid, Ben Buchanan's brother. Zach did not get the shallow end of the gene pool in the family.
Right.
I mean, he's got the size, he's got the look. Here's the crazy thing. When we saw him, we're sitting there looking at him going like, okay, contrary to popular belief, wrestling is a very aesthetic business. He walked out, I'm like, dude, he looks like he's a wrestler, dude. He's big. Hey, he's young. He needs to probably put on a few more pounds for his frame. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you just brought it up. Like, he just graduated. He's still going to have. We say that about college athletes all the time. They go from high school to college. What do they say? He needs to put on about 20 pounds of muscle. Then they go pro. Hey, he needs to put on probably another 10, 15 pounds of muscle. Like, he's literally in that stage of he's going to, build out the frame.
He's still growing. But dude, I mean, it wasn't like. He looked like he belonged. I said this about Ben Buchanan, and I'm saying it now about Zach, who literally go see him while you can. Look, he's green, he's young, 100%. Right.
But Zach Buchanan has every tool in the toolbox to be an NXT guy like his brother.
Right.
So he is one that I say, yeah, if you want to just get a look of him before you go see the NXT, yeah, you might want to catch him while you can.
There is a big difference between green and unathletic.
Yeah.
And green and athletic. Like, not even on the same planet. As far as like talent and all those sort of things. Hunter James was able to retain the Jake the Snake Legacy title in that great four-way match that I'm excited to see on IWTV. And then in the main event, two guys have been on a collision course for almost a year. Gunnar Miller challenging Judas for that Southern Honor heavyweight title, and things broke loose. Things got crazy. Hierarchy and Endgame into it again. So the match is thrown out, but then Chip Day making a pretty surprise return and joining the Hierarchy. And then you were telling me how this whole thing ended.
Total chaos. I mean, you knew Endgame wasn't going to go out. Look, they lost the War Chamber match. They're not going to go quietly into the night. They're going to, come back, and they still, by the way, they hold the gold. They still have that Southern Honor Championship with Judas. So it's not like they were just going to, hey, we lost it, boo hoo hoo, and they were going to go away. However, there's a saying that's been around on the Tapped Out Podcast Network for a very, very long time. And that saying goes that a motivated and a focused Chip Day is a very, very dangerous athlete. And the Chip Day that came out looks motivated, looks in phenomenal shape, and he's got all the passion in the world that I think if at the next show, we'll set it up here, there's going to be a last man standing match, Judas versus Gunnar. Mm-hmm. If Judas manages to get past, Chip Day looks like he might be a player in the future. That's just my opinion. It's my take. Take it for what you will. But,
So there you have it. It is going to be the Rumblejack Friday night, August the 9th. It's always one of the biggest shows. It's become one of the biggest shows of the year in Georgia. I would say you say things like Rumblejack and Shindig and Hardcore Hell. These are shows that are becoming more and more well known, and there's more as more promotions are growing and getting there. So if you haven't checked out Southern Honor, they're on IWTV. Catch up on what they're doing and get ready for Rumblejack.
And before we go too far, I do want to mention, we talked about the match last week that we had, like, hey, this could be the one that steals the show. Did not disappoint. One, Nick Halen, who we're going to discuss a little bit here in a minute, and Kevin Ryan. Talk about a guy, again, like, it's crazy now that we've been doing this for 7, we're creeping up on 8 years now about doing this thing, that it's like seeing a Kevin Ryan from where he was the first Southern Honor champion.
Yeah.
As crazy as this sounds, how much better he is today, watching him go in, against a guy like Nick Halen, who, again, take attitude aside and put it to the side, whatever. One of the best wrestlers in Georgia. If you don't believe me, ask him; he'll tell you he is. Speaking like Kevin Ryan, like, sidebar here real quick. Check out for Forever Pro. Like, he's got something special over there, and we're going to talk about it in the coming weeks. But yeah, I was real happy with the match. I mean, Nick Halen goes over, and he is qualified. He's in the Rumblejack, but it did not disappoint, to say the least.
Yeah, Southern Honor never disappoints. Then on Saturday night, you made the trip down. I think it was your first time down to Wrestle America. We talked about their Unchained match that was going to be taking place. Let me encourage you, fans. We talk about this all the time. Wrestle America, you can go watch their shows on YouTube. It's a great way to follow this promotion. What was it like being at your first Wrestle America show?
Dude, it's a good, great, old school wrestling show. And, because what I loved about the doubleheader weekend is I got the 2 different contrasts of shows as well, which, a lot of people are like, oh, are you picking? No, I don't pick, because I'm like, they both, like, what you remember how I think it was last week we talked about, like, know what your audience wants, give them what they want, and that, they'll keep coming back happy. I went to 2 shows this weekend that both know what their fan bases want, and they gave it to them. And it was Wrestle America. It was my first, by the way. It was my first show at Wrestle America. Took the wife. We had some, a friend hanging out with us too. That it was awesome. The commentary from the two ladies was just outstanding. But it was fun. I try to tell people all the time, like, I think at times, and look, and we're as guilty as anybody. We overcomplicate what we expect out of wrestling and what we want and what should happen and what shouldn't happen. And I'm like, man, just sit back and watch it. And like, it could be really, really fun. And that's what Wrestle America was. It was like, I don't know if I'm doing it justice here by like just saying like, dude, by the way, there's a whole lot to be said for a very comfortable basketball gym in the summertime. Like it was air conditioned and it was cool. I was like, okay, that's always a plus. But there was a cool moment. Like, look, we mentioned the Dennis Gale passing last week's show. They had they did a spot, before the show. They had the boots, his boots in the ring, 10 bell salute. Wrestlers came out, and kind of on a sidebar, like I get it. Like a lot of people are if you were there, you're probably gonna say, hey, this was part of what they were trying to do, because Sal worked the first match right out of the gate. But before that match and before, his opponent came out and it was part of the story, Sal gave a really cool, and this is the thing, this isn't my words, by the way. This is my wife's words. She was genuinely moved by Sal's speech for Dennis Gale. And she was like, Sal did a great job, with that. And she was like, that's pretty cool. And I'm like, you know what I mean? Because that's, again, sometimes take your spouse, take your kids, you will see wrestling through a totally different perspective, and that's why there are times I love to do that. Now, the great thing is, you're about to get this experience some of that.
That's right. So that's right. I think one of the highest compliments I could pay to a wrestling show is, I think when you and I go, Myron goes, we are looking through a little different lens than the typical fan, because we're looking for things. We are analyzing things. I pull back the curtain. I count chairs. I count chairs. I'm curious about attendance and stuff like that. And so I take a minute and I walk around and I count chairs. What I love is when I'm at a show that completely takes me out of that and reminds me what got me into wrestling, where I just lose my mind. And that I love that. And it sounds like that was the experience you had at Wrestle America. It was a huge night. Every title they had changed hands. Tag team titles changed hands. Their Liberty title was their secondary title. And then they had that big Unchained main event. Talk a little bit about that main event. Your wife said, man, this kind of feels something different.
Yeah, so she's not a diehard wrestling fan. Like, she's really not. That's not her thing. But she's supportive. She loves her husband, so she's watched a lot of good and bad wrestling. But she sat there and she kind of was like, this is different. Like, it just, she's seen Elimination Chamber, because she asked me beforehand, what does that even mean? And I was like, okay, well, imagine an Elimination Chamber, but instead of chambers, they're chained to the post, and so they can't really get into the ring or whatever. And by the way, I was even off a little bit what I expected. That's the crazy thing, is even I saw it, I was like, oh, that's not exactly. The chains were much longer than I thought they were going to be, so the guys could move around a little bit. They weren't literally like right there at the post, which, by the way, played into the to the how the match was laid out, obviously, so they could get, if you're handcuffed right there to the post and somebody hits you, like, what do? You're just going to fall straight down in your arm. So, like, I think they did a really good job. But yeah, for her to say, well, this isn't something I've seen before, it's tough for that to happen with us, right? We've watched so much wrestling over the years, but she really enjoyed it, and that's kind of cool. And look, I tell you what I enjoyed about this match. And so if Wrestle America this is my best compliment that I can give them. It wasn't what I expected in the least. They took, like, when you think of chains are going to be involved, I expected, honestly, at the end of the day, there was just going to be blood everywhere. Now, in hindsight, thinking about it, it was in a Parks and Rec gym. That was probably not the case, et cetera, whatever.
Right.
but still could have been a possibility, right? Because we never
Right.
know. It does happen. They took a match that was serious. It was for the title, and they still peppered in these little comedy spots along the way that just had the crowd reacting and loved it. I got to tell the story, right? Like there was a literally, I messaged you and just said baby boot spot.
Right.
And
I'm
this,
like,
by the
what in
way,
world?
if you're listening to this podcast, this is going to sound like the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard of. But the crowd reacted, like just popped for it. It was the craziest thing. Austin Towers was taking Fried Eddie around the ring. Literally, fans were putting their feet up, and he was running his head into their feet. And as he worked around, he ends up, there's a lady holding an infant. This isn't even a toddler. This is an infant. And they lifted her foot up. The foot was, this is horrible because I'm showing on video. Itty bitty little baby foot. And he hits, Fried Eddie's head into this baby's foot. And Fried Eddie sold the spot. Like he literally took a bump. And I'm like, super negative, but probably looks at that and goes, that is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. Fan Nick laughed. Like I completely popped and laughed. And by the way, the crowd really popped for it.
Right.
So kudos to them. I think that's kind of the compliment that you took a match that could have, I'm not saying don't take it serious, but they could have taken it so serious that right. No. But then we don't get that spot, which everybody absolutely loved.
That was not a planned spot. That shows some creativity on the wrestler's part and freedom to read the crowd. Mm-hmm. What are they reacting to? And it's like you said, that the crowd could have reacted totally different. But I am 100%, when that show gets listed to YouTube, I'm going to go fast forward, watch that spot, and then I'm going to go back and watch the whole show. We do want to thank the folks at Wrestle America for reaching out and having a good conversation with them. And we've already said, man, let's get back out there. I'm interested to see. It feels like, they have another big show coming up July 13th, but it feels like this was kind of like maybe the end of the road. You got all the titles changing hands, and now you can kind of reshuffle things and move forward. And that's what we see, promotions happening. We're getting ready. We're going to talk about Shindig here in a little bit. That's kind of like the end of the road for these certain stories.
I think they showed that because it looked like, I mean, again, it's my first show, so if I'm wrong, I apologize. Mm-hmm. But it was like a lot of their staples. Like obviously the main event was filled with guys that they're totally invested in. Mm-hmm. But there's new guys, and like I know Sal works there a pretty good bit. But Sunny Days was there, so that was kind of a new thing. But then CT Keys is there, who we absolutely big fans of, but he's associated, he's kind of the bodyguard, the whatever you want to call, we call it the heater. He's the heater for Fried Eddie there, who is the new champion, by the way, for them. So real quick, Fried Eddie is your new Wrestle America champion. KJ Impala is the Liberty champion. Look at Duncan. Will always be Duncan Mitchell to me. I apologize in advance. I know that he's Duncan Acevedo now. And Young Mighty Joe are your tag champions, which was a cool I had not seen him in person yet. I'd seen him in video, but not in person. Again, gimmicks that people like, hey, I can't do that. That's too much comedy. Embrace it. And he did a pretty good job. I was really, really impressed with the job that he did with it. So, but I think you probably are in a reset, but I like seeing some of those stories carry. Obviously, the Mike Payne, J-Rod story, that's going to be carrying on to the next show. But just lots of cool stuff across the board. I give Wrestle America a big thumbs up.
To me, the biggest surprise of the weekend happened in Augusta, Valor Pro Wrestling, Warren Road Community Center. They had the Garden City Classic. It had been several years since they had that. You have Lodi, who now is co-owner or owner of the company, controlling the company, and he's in certain matches. You had the front office, most of them suspended. Owen Knight gets his rematch with John Davis. John Davis still the Viral Pro champion. But the biggest surprise, one thing I liked about this tournament is you had guys appearing in Viral Brock Anderson. You had Lodi was there. John Schuyler was there. Then you had Nick Halen. And to be honest, it felt like Nick Halen, okay, get his foot in the door, whatever. He'll have one match. That was not the case.
No.
As Nick Halen ran the table, defeated Brock Anderson, who was accompanied to the ring by Arn Anderson in the finals of that Garden City Classic.
Well, look, they tried to get one over. So this is where I love the Lodi concept of this story.
Yeah.
Is he's keeping this thing, trying to keep this balance.
Right.
Hancock comes out, Josh Hancock comes out, tries to make it 2-on-1, him and Hood versus Brock, and of course, Arn's not going to let that happen because he's in the building, dude. He did a meet and greet. You didn't think he's going to let his kid roll out there, on his own, right? So he comes out there and, and Josh Hancock can take this to the bank. I'm going to say some positive things about him in a minute.
Yeah.
But getting in any kind of physical altercation, confrontation, whatever you want to call it, with Arn Anderson is probably not the smartest move he's ever made.
Right.
Even at his age, Arn dropped him like a bad habit. So,
yeah.
I mean, you might want to reconsider that in the future, just saying.
Yeah, I mean, there's many rules that I like to live my life by, the golden rule, but one of those rules is never mess with Arn Anderson. That's just a rule. That's just something I live by. But Nick Halen wins the Garden City Classic. And this just now is occurring to me. Nick Halen and John Davis, August 10th at Infection 8. Nick Halen and John Davis, have they ever even been in the same locker room before Saturday night? That's a match. I mean, I'm looking at the calendar. How do I get to Augusta on August 10th just to see that match? And then we talk about that all the time. Like, we don't know any of the other matches on that card. We don't know the name of the show. But right now,
well, it's Infection. I believe it's Infection.
Right?
That's
Yeah. Which is kind of like their WrestleMania or whatever. And I'm in. If I can get there, I'm going to be there because
that's a Rumblejack Infection back-to-back weekend.
Oh, good night.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So another thing, just we got to mention Fluffman. Fluffman's everywhere. Southern Honor Friday night, viral. Fluffman, Augusta's his hometown. He is loved. He is loved in Augusta.
Yeah, we got video of that. Second biggest pop of the night, only behind one Arn Anderson. Surprise, surprise, that Arn got the biggest pop of the night, right?
Right, yeah.
But I think, let me ask you this, though. Can we walk away from this show if we don't talk about what happens backstage? I think that's the huge part. Some would call it, in the movie business, it'd be a cliffhanger, but we would call it like then what? Like that's an Eric Bischoff thing. Well, then what?
Right.
And you got to leave them asking questions when they leave. We should be asking more questions, not just like, all right, well, they gave us everything we wanted. Now what? No. Why on earth, when Owen Knight and Drew Hood attack Lodi, would Josh Hancock stop them? We fade to black with that question as we go, and we're going into Infection. So there's the other thing of why are we got to go? Because we got to find out why. And
Hancock helped Lodi up.
Yeah.
Like, Hancock extended his hand to Lodi, and now what in the world? What in the world is happening? So before we move on, I just want to say this. Obviously, we were not able to be there at Viral. They reached out to us, said, hey, here's what happened in our show, gave us some numbers. There were a lot of shows this weekend, all right? A lot of shows. Just to touch on them, you had Kingdom Pro in Savannah. You had Georgia Premier in Jasper, Coastal Empire in Savannah, Bullpen Pro, their opening show in Bowdon. There's a couple of shows I'll touch on that are happening after we're recording this, but all we're saying, tapthatpod@gmail.com. We're on Facebook. Send us a message. Let us know what is happening at your show.
Yeah.
Let us know how we can talk about where people can watch it, how people can buy tickets, where they can go to see it live. That's kind of like what we want to do with this podcast. And so we would love to hear from the promoters, promotions, especially on these weekends where there's 100 places to be and we can only be in a couple of them. Yeah.
Spin the wheel, make a deal. That's my new thing. Yeah.
Yes. I mentioned shows happening today. We're recording on Sunday because it's the busy season for me. Georgia Outlaw Wrestling running at the Royston Dome this afternoon, and then Southern States, they kind of start their summer run at the Platinum Championship Wrestling Arena, and this is Murder's Savage 16 is still ongoing. I'm interested to see. This could be a huge thing for a young wrestler to win this season and to win this challenge, and then where do they go from there?
Yeah, I mean, I know, Dylan Lesson, I think so, however he pronounces his last name. I know he thinks he's the foregone conclusion winner. Pepper Bottom's in that mix. I always tell a lot of people, look, as much as I think, he is what he is, as far, he's got a bit of an attitude problem. But, I mean, he's super talented, and I think a lot of people are going to completely overlook him potentially in this thing. That's just my opinion.
Well, whoever wins it, they got to go through 15 other opponents. So whoever wins it, it will be, you might could trick your way through one match, two match, but being round robin, whoever wins this, it's going to be really, really well deserved. Oh, yeah. So that's for this week's Indy Rewind. Let's head right into making the drives and talk about the great wrestling you can see this week. You might be thinking, well, I've got weekend plans. Well, doesn't matter, because Thursday, Phoenix Wrestling Experience is back in Augusta. They're running a lot of their shows happen on days that aren't Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. So make sure you go check them out Thursday night. Then Friday down in Conyers, Platinum Championship Wrestling. They're at their new building. The typical names you would see there. Saturday night. This is one I've had on my calendar. June 15th, Southern Fried Championship Wrestling presents Shindig. Nick, as someone who has been to many of these, how would you describe? I'm bringing a friend to Shindig. What's the best way I could explain this to her?
This would be, like I said, this is their WrestleMania. I mean, if you're trying to cross it over into, you're a casual wrestling fans, this is their WrestleMania. This is all roads, lead to Shindig. It's the big summer event. I mean, you look at the card. I mean, you look at a couple of the ones that are there, and that says it all, right? Hmm. So that's kind of how I would explain it to a casual fan.
That's what I tried to tell her. Let me just say this. On a personal note, when you say to someone, hey, I'd made plans to go to this wrestling show, and you don't have to sell it, they're like, yeah, let's go. And you don't have to sell it to them, that's a good thing. But when they base that off of two things, number one, I mean, I'm just irresistible. She wants to spend time with me. But number two, based off a very positive experience she had at her first wrestling show at Turnbuckle. This is how you make new fans. You give them a positive experience. Mm-hmm. And I pitched the date night wrestling, and so now I'm putting my money where my mouth is. And I've been trying to explain to her. This was the coolest thing. I said, hey, they're having a ladder match. What is a ladder match? She says, that seems dangerous. I said, yes, it is. The Classics title is going to be on the line. Billy Buck, Will Caution, Jackson Carter, Kenway, Tyler Stevens, The Wall, and Aaron Dallas. This is going to be, because these are not, I would say most of those guys, not the typical people you would think in a ladder match.
Mm-mm.
And so they've all got nothing to lose and everything to gain. But that is one, at least in her mind, she's like, okay, I got to see that.
We talk about the Mania comparison, right? This is the car crash match. This is
Yes.
You're going to get one where that kind of happens. But then we're going to save that other one to the end. We'll save the main till the end. Well, let me ask you a question. What goes on the main?
Great minds think alike.
This is just the old timer in me, and listen, I'm not, maybe I am overstepping my thought process here.
Mm-hmm.
Todd Sexton's pretty old school. We could say that.
Mm-hmm.
I almost think you have to end with Judas and CT Keys for that Southern Fried Championship. And that's the main. That's my take. Those two, because a lot of people are like, oh, that ain't a car crash match. That's just that's going to be a strong style wrestling fight.
Slobber knocker.
Correct. And I still don't know what the over under, who's the favorite odds on, because that's just two guys that I don't want to bet against either guy for that matter.
No.
But I think when we slide over, a lot of tickets are sold to see David Manders finally get his hands on one-on-one against Nick Halen. Wait, can I ask a question?
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean Nick Halen's correct when he says, who'd you pay to see? Tip your cap, because you may be, you may actually, Nick Halen has a point in this scenario. Now, they're paying to see you get your ass handed to you, but they are, I guess, technically paying to see you. So Nick Halen is 100% accurate when he says, who'd you pay to see in this case, right?
And isn't that the essence of being a wrestling heel? That to be a true heel. People, when Ric Flair was a traveling world champion, people all around the country bought a ticket 7 nights a week to see Ric Flair get beat up. To see their guy beat up on Ric Flair. It's the essence of being a great heel. And
my unsolicited advice from just a fan podcaster: stop trying to be the cool heel and be the one that everybody wants to see get it. He's tops here for a reason. He embraces you want to see me. Because is there anything better? This is, by the way, it's going to sound like, as I start the thought process, it's going to sound like a negative, and I'm prefacing it's not. Nick Halen is the guy that you look at and go, when he walks into the ring, there's always some tough guy sitting on the front row going, I could take him.
Right.
And then he wrestles, and you're like, well, maybe not.
Right.
So, but at the same time, a great heel is a guy that, I could take him. I could take him. No, you can't. Stop thinking you can. No, you can't. And then when you see him wrestle, you start going like, well, you get him. You take him. I think that's how it works out. So that's the positive. It's a very deceiving package that it's like a lot of people, when you first see Nick Halen, you're like, I could take him. And then you watch him wrestle and go, yeah, my bad. That's not true.
Another guy that people, I think, are paying to see get beat up or pay to see lose or pay to see humbled is you got Hunter James and Xavier Reyes, who is looking for some revenge. We talked about it several shows ago. Xavier Reyes, who's thought his career may be over, who we'll see who gets the last laugh, but right now he's heading in this match with the upper hand psychologically, I think.
Yeah.
On Hunter James. So come see us at Shindig. That's next Friday night or next Saturday night there in Monroe, Georgia. There's other shows also happening. Statesboro, Georgia, American Premier Wrestling. Amber Nova is going to be there making an appearance. And then Pro Wrestling Clash is not one we've talked about before. Is going to be in Chatsworth, Georgia. If you're in that area, go check them out. And then on Sunday in Conyers at the PCW Arena, first time ever, an all African American show, Change for Wrestling, featuring the return to wrestling of the Velveteen Dream, who had been in NXT. A lot of controversy. Don't want to get into all that, but he returns to wrestling versus Narcissism, and that's one. I'm hoping they're recording that, putting that on YouTube. But that seems like a pretty big deal to me.
Yeah, no. Look, Patrick Clark. Easy for me to say. Patrick Clark, I believe, is his name, and that's he's working by now. So there's lots of names on this card that we've seen, we know, we're impressed with them, and lots of respect for those guys. Look, the return of David Ali into Georgia. Everybody knows I'm a massive fan of David Ali, and have been for years. Like I could be accused of I centered a show around him at one point. I mean, I have been accused of that. That's how much of a fan I am. Skrilla will be facing David Ali, so that'll be a good one. I know that one was a social media kind of back and forth. CT Keys versus Tyson Maddox, on and on and on. Like you brought up Clark and Narcissism on the card. It's a whole thing. It's a big card. So look, if you aren't, if Sunday, if you're looking for something to do, I think that's there's something to do there. I mean, you can go out there and check it out because it's gonna be stacked with some pretty good talent on that show.
Yeah, check them out on Facebook, Change for Wrestling. You can get your tickets online for that show. And, again, that's a pretty big deal. We've seen Darius Lockhart do a very similar thing with Ashe Wrestling in the Charlotte area. They've run, I think, 3 shows now and had some really great success and really have given some maybe underutilized talents some opportunities. And I know that the Ashe show I went to had just such a tremendous vibe to it, a very different vibe than any other wrestling show I've been to. So we'll see what Change for Wrestling can do and see if they can make their mark and do some good and keep it going. So again, fans, lots going on. But let's continue our discussion. Last week we did the Power 5. This week we're going to talk about the hot hand. Who are the people in Georgia that seem to be on a really great streak right now? These are in no particular order. I'll mention somebody we just mentioned, and that's Narcissism. Narcissism, obviously doing what he's doing in Platinum Championship Wrestling, what he's doing in Deep South, what he's really doing anywhere he goes. And now this opportunity against somebody who was on TV, someone who really had the rocket strapped to him at one point, former, I believe, North American champion in NXT. But taking on the Velveteen Dream and Narcissism, we're looking to follow up on that Technical Wrestler of the Year.
Well, here's the thing. He's kind of embraced this new, we always talk about this attitude change and the personality change, call it what you will, that he's embraced. And what I love about it, by the way, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
I love uniformity of my, of the character across the board. And I think, like I said, we're seeing it every single promotion he's popping up, and we're seeing him a lot of places. That's kind of what we're talking about, and he's up there in a lot of places. He's in the mix everywhere.
I mean, maybe he's thinking beyond. Maybe he's thinking bigger fish to fry than just winning that one award. So interesting. So obviously, kudos to Narcissism and the work he's doing. Here's another guy. Again, these are in no particular order. A guy we've mentioned on this show several times, and that's Nick Halen. How can you not have the hot hand? He beats Kevin Ryan Friday night, and then his first appearance in Viral Pro Wrestling, he wins the Garden City Classic, earned a title shot. There's not a lot of guys in Georgia you could do that on their first show in your company, and it seemed legitimate.
Right. He's going to come in and he's going to the belief that they have, he's coming in and he's going to be, he's going to just blend right in and jump straight to the top. I mean, think about this when you're talking about, look, let's give the devil his due, right? He qualifies at Rumblejack on Friday. He wins the Garden City Classic and gets a shot at the Viral Championship at the next show. He's in one of the A or 1A 1B story at Shindig. He's wrestling owner promoter David Manders. Oh, by the way, he's the Anarchy heavyweight champion, and he'll be main eventing Hardcore Hell the week after that. I mean, literally in 3 consecutive weeks. Boom, boom, boom. All and he's the top everywhere he goes. And we always say it. Look, again, attitude out. I hate to throw that disclaimer in there sometimes, but it's like, look, that's just who they are. You got to ask yourself at some point, if the guy keeps telling you I'm this good, and he's delivering everywhere he goes, do you not at some point have to go, like him or love him or what? Like him, love him, hate him, whatever. Give him his credit. Give him, when it's due, it's due. So pay your respects. He's delivering everywhere he goes.
That's right. That's right. Here's someone, we mentioned him very briefly, and that is Alexander Lev. How can you not be on hot hand? He's signed with NWA. He's been making some waves there. And this young man, the future's so bright for him. And he seems to really have found his niche. He seems to be getting more comfortable in his own skin, more comfortable in the ring. And the sky's the limit for Alexander Lev.
Yeah. If you would have seen him just a few years ago, to where the level of improvement from point A to point B, well, some would argue it might be point C, D, E, or F. I mean, as you're growing along the way, but he's done a tremendous job. Same thing. Look, the whole the Messiah gimmick. He's always got a bunch of followers with him. He's always in a group that are protecting him, and so forth and so on. But all of that, when you kind of take it for what it is, you're like, okay, yeah. And then, by the way, I think the biggest part, people are often surprised about how good he really is in the ring. And I tell people, that's the great thing about character work, is you'll completely underestimate the in-ring sometimes when the character works so good, and then he gets in there and he does get in there and he delivers. That's when I think you got to tip your cap to him. And look, and kudos to him for getting that recognition of, NWA seeing it, because he's still young.
Yeah.
And getting that opportunity at a young age. So kudos to him and congratulations.
Yeah, we definitely have our eyes on him. As
by the way, I'm glad you got busted open at Southern Honor.
You don't see that often, but great to see. Here's the next one. Again, somebody we talked about him on the show, but Gunnar Miller. When was the last time Gunnar Miller lost a match? I mean, the match Friday was kind of thrown out. Was it when he lost the title to Judas, which was almost a year ago? So he's literally, you talk about this streak that he's on. He is literally the hot hand in Southern Honor, and he hasn't been beating lightweights. I mean, Saurinaros, TT Kids. I mean, this is a very impressive streak. The question is, when he gets to Rumblejack and he gets that no excuses title shot with Judas, last man standing, can he take that momentum and win the title? And if not, what does that mean for Gunnar Miller?
What's next? Right? Like, what's next? But here's the thing. This category ain't about what's next. It's where you at right now, and nobody is on a streak like that. I mean, that's the thing. He's buzzsaw. And I think what you threw in there was the key part. Look, a lot of people mock the Goldberg streak and stuff in the day because he was beating nobody. And eventually, obviously, he started, but in the beginning, it wasn't. Month in and month out, when Gunnar Miller's beating somebody, like I said, he's beating guys that are like, okay, that was and I mean, look, I think, me personally, I guess I won't speak for you, I think Saurinaros is one of the absolute best wrestlers you're going to find on the indies, anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a lot of people that have great minds think the same. He buzzsawed Sauronaro, and I was like...
Was that match even a minute?
It was super fast.
Yeah.
So, Gunnar Miller's on fire right now. That's to be a hot hand is an understatement for Gunnar Miller.
So, again, that's Rumblejack. That is, sorry, I got to look at the calendar. August 9th is when the Titans collide in Canton, Georgia, and sticking with that theme of Canton, Georgia. Dylan Frymer. What a great job booking. We talked off air, and I won't get too deep. We talked about some places, some angles, some stories that felt very rushed, that felt kind of head scratching. We talk about this a lot. Nothing feels rushed at Southern Honor right now. He's mixing in some new talents. He's got some old rivalries. He's got some new rivalries just in time for Rumblejack, where during the Rumblejack match, anything can happen. And a lot of times he uses the Rumblejack match to set up the next feuds. It can finish things, it can start things, but Dylan is firing on all cylinders right now.
Yeah, we're in a great peak window of Todd firing up, heading into Shindig. Dylan's riding in that way because look, we forget sometimes how fast the calendar moves as we get older.
Oh gosh,
Still here is October, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, but we're only in June." Okay, they don't run July because it would fall 4th of July, so they don't run July. But literally, that means Rumblejack sets the table for boom, boom. It's setting the table for still here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I 100%.
Maybe this is a question to ask. When I was helping with booking, we were trying to run 10 to 12 shows a year, and I was trying to get us to think in terms of, okay, these are going to be our big three. Are more and more promotions moving toward that to where, Southern Fried has Shindig, but along the way,
they have Crossroads is their other big one. Yeah, so they do have other big shows. Yeah, I think you should, and maybe I'm wrong in that. I do believe that you should almost get your traditional like big three, big four, whatever. The problem is it depends because all right, look, I'm going to be full here. I can't say this any nicer. If you're running every other month, it's hard to have a big three because, that's literally like boom, 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 boom. It's hard. If you're running monthly, you should have a big three because then you have 3 shows that set up the next one. And then you have 3 shows and then the next one, et cetera, et cetera. So, but if you can't do a big 3 if you run 6 because then it's like, hey, set up, show, set up, show, set up, show.
I've made the argument that if you, and I've said this publicly, privately, whatever, people like it, don't like it, I don't care. If you're only running every other month, 6 shows a year, every single one of them's got to be a big show.
Yes.
You don't have the luxury, to me, this is just my personal opinion. If you're only running 6 shows a year, you don't have the luxury of not having a title match every single show. Your title's got to be right there. So to me, you don't have the luxury of, okay, our champion's going to team with this guy and we're going to set. No, you really don't have time.
I'll push back and say at least 4 of your 6, at least.
I'm fine. I'm fine with that. But your champion needs to be, if you only run 6 shows a year, whoever your champion is, they need to know the schedule. They need to know the money, and you need to tell them, you got to be at these shows.
Right. Have that conversation ahead of time. These are the dates. If you can't make these 4, look, especially hey, you're losing it on the 5th show. We need you here for these 4. If you can't make it, we're going to go in a different direction. That simple.
Correct. Yeah. But I do think the more often you run, it gives you more freedom. It gives you more options to play around with things, to almost experiment, where if you're the fewer times you're running, you can't really see what works. You just got to throw everything out there.
There's the advantage. That's, Southern Fried sometimes runs every other week. Look, promotions that say whatever you want, right? SCA runs every week. They can do all kinds of stories. They could build stories for days because they run every single week. So, this is probably completely not the right place to do this, I literally got video while we were recording.
Okay.
And I played it. If you wonder where I disappeared to for a second, because I had to see it.
Okay.
This is why you need to go to indie shows, and because you never know what's going to happen. Bullpen Pro Wrestling. I got a video from their show. Guess who showed up at Bullpen Pro Wrestling?
No idea.
Ben Buchanan, the artist formerly known as Brooks Jensen. And basically, on this show, cut a promo telling NXT to kiss his ass. He was home at Bullpen Pro. So, I mean, literally a main WWE story, NXT call. I mean, look, it's a WWE story playing out at a Bullpen Pro Wrestling at their debut show.
What?
More to come. We'll have to cover this at some point. Literally, I got a video footage of him actually. It came through on my phone. That's what, if you're watching, you thought I disappeared for a second. I literally muted my audio because I just had to listen to what was said.
So you I mean, that's more than the forbidden door right there. That is embracing.
So Ben Buchanan showed up at his father's promotion, Bullpen Pro Wrestling, and basically talked smack about NXT. So keep that in mind, folks. Why do we say you got to buy a ticket and go to an indie show? Are we in an era now where a lot of these promotions, by the way, it goes back to things we've said in the past. Some promotions you're going to have a good payday. Some days you're going to get a good opponent. Some others are going to be connections and things are going to happen and open up doors for you. They're all different. But from a fan perspective, they all have if you know there's certain promotions you could go to, you're like, there's a chance. By the way, I can't even say this behind a paywall at this point, but I got to tell you something after we stop recording.
Okay.
Yeah, it's literally, I found out something on Saturday. Anyway, so Bullpen Pro Wrestling, what did we talk about the advantages when we talked about them running? I know this is completely, I blew up our show notes, everything's
no, that's fine.
Literally,
that's
I'm like breaking, while we were recording it, broke through. I was like, I had to listen. We discussed one of the major advantages that Bullpen Pro Wrestling would have is Bull Buchanan's connections and people that he knows. It's like, and clearly there's the first thing played out on their debut show.
You're telling me there's a chance, a possibility that footage from a Bullpen Wrestling show could be played on NXT?
Maybe it's shared on social media. That's how that whole story seems to be developing. Brooks Jensen's issues with NXT have all played out on social media, not on television.
Interesting.
So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye out for it. So anyway, back to our regularly scheduled program.
Maybe Bullpen Pro Wrestling has the hot hand. That's great. That's a heck of a debut show right there.
Yeah. That's why I wanted to throw it in right there, like literally as we're going, like bam. Because now I guarantee you, if you were a fan at that show, you're wondering at the next show, is Ben Buchanan going to be on that show?
Wowzers.
So, anyway.
We're talking about a promotion. We're talking about their first show, and they are making they're coming in and making waves. That's pretty that's pretty impressive. That's what, listen, fans, that's what independent wrestling's all about. You never know what you are going to get. Hey, let me encourage you. So for the last 2 weeks, we've kind of not run out of time because we do what we do, but we try to like tell you the champions. You're going to have to, that's going to be behind the paywall this week. I'm going to do a special episode. We're going to talk about the heavyweight champions and other things. So that's just another reason to become a member over at patreon.com/tappedoutpod. Also on YouTube, you can become a member there. You get all the stuff early. You get the bonus content. Listen, I may even, well, no, Nick said he couldn't talk about it behind a paywall. Listen, we haven't even begun to really flesh out what all we can do for our members. I mean, you got Coffee and Crossfaces, you got Heath's Hot Takes, you got all this stuff. So I'm excited for the future on that. Again, we always remind you, you got to subscribe on YouTube, hit that thumbs up, hit that bell, subscribe everywhere you can. What a loaded show. Nothing we did. There's just a lot of independent wrestling happening.
Yeah, it's again, I can't stress it enough. That's why you need to go out. I tell people all the time, like we do our best to go to as many shows as possible, but it's not just us, man. We can talk about it all day, but you guys have to go out, buy the tickets. Support a show that's like, hey, it's 6 hours from me. If their channel's monetized, support them on YouTube. Become a member if they have content behind a paywall, or just watch their shows, watch the ads, help them generate some revenue. We talked about like shows like Coastal Empire, like that's a big one. I tell people all the time, watch their stuff on YouTube and help them out as much as you can. And look, IWTV is what it is. If they're there, give them a shot. I didn't even tell you this. I had a great conversation with Kevin Ryan about Forever Pro on Friday night to Saturday morning. What do you think I did when I woke up? Shout out to Kevin Ryan. I went on IWTV and I watched the Forever Pro episode where he had a match versus Jay Lethal. I was just curious.
Nice.
So again, give them a play.
We also want to give, and I meant to put this. You had Kraken Pro Wrestling, which has started releasing their episodes. Very interesting. They're shorter than 20 minutes. You can watch it while you're cooking dinner or washing the dishes. And a very episodic TV format. So it's not just sitting there and watching the show as it happens.
Very Crockett promotion style.
Yes. So I greatly appreciate that. And I like that they're experimenting with content because I think, how do I say that? I think a lot of promotions now are trying to accumulate content. Here's the thing. You can accumulate all the content you want. If you do not package it correctly and release it in a way that is appealing, that compels people to watch it, then somebody's just spending a lot of time editing video.
Yeah.
And I think you and I are always looking for something new, something different to watch.
So we're officially into what I'm learning to affectionately call Heath and Nick's overtime.
Yeah.
As we run over on the show. So I will tell you, like, from my perspective. So I watched them. All right, let's pull it back a little bit. I'm going to go way behind. This is overtime behind the paywall, right? I did it for a reason. I watched both. I've learned a trick in my time. I talked about my wife going with me to Wrestle America. I always try to bounce things off of her. What did you think of this, XYZ? Because there's one thing that we talk about, how our perspective is very skewed at times.
Yes.
We work our best to pull ourselves back to a casual fan, and it's almost impossible. Can it be done? Here's the thing: it's hard for me to do it. The promotion has to help me get there.
Right.
But with my wife's eyes, I will do things like, I said, hey, do me a favor. Full disclosure, she loves Sam Skaggs. Absolutely loves and adores Sam Skaggs. I said, do me a favor. I want you to watch this and tell me what you think. So we sat in the living room on the couch. I put YouTube up on the Apple TV, and I watched both episodes. And I said, give me your feedback as somebody watching it. She absolutely loved it, by the way. She really did. But how about this? Kudos for her. She gave me like 8 notes and said, this, have them try. And you know why I didn't have a problem passing that along to those guys? Because at the same breath, Show Stealer, by the way, full credit. It's tough, right? Full credit. William Huckabee's hilarious.
Yes.
I love the character of Will Huckabee. He may feel like he doesn't get enough love on the show, but he's going to get it right here because very entertained by that character. Good job. Great job. He's a vet. He's paid his dues, but I was super entertained by him. I said all that to get to my real point. See, this is the overtime piece. If the WWE is realizing, have you noticed they've been changing shots? They've been trying new things.
Yes.
If the absolute greatest production wrestling company on the planet realizes we have to try some new things. By the way, they really messed some up. There was a shot on one of the PLEs where a cameraman was in the way of another or like the guy pulling the cord, and I'm sure they were like, okay, let's not do that again. The things that Kraken is trying, and I said all that to get to this, kudos to them for trying something out of the box, different, make it, like, I loved the little bitty thing. Nothing I said, by the way, was like, oh, that was terrible. It was like, hey, maybe try this, maybe try, or widen this, or blah, blah, blah. Details, little things. Tell the guy to take his sunglasses off, something like that. I don't know. I mean, but it was literally small notes. But to go out of your way to at least to try to be better than, less than, different than. They're going the different than. Let's do this. By the way, kudos for giving their sponsors a value. Giving their sponsors a real value, because those ads will run on YouTube forever.
Yes.
So kudos to them for that. Like I said, I just saw so many positives. But again, for them to go through with the graphics and the audio, every little thing they tried to do, and it was funny. One of my things was it looked very Crockett-like. Thank you. That's kind of what we were looking for. I like, so good kudos, job well done, if that's what you're trying to accomplish. I can't put it over enough. I thought, like, I'm like you. I love that it was 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 12 to 15, 16, whatever it was, versus, here's the thing. I don't even remember because it didn't feel like it was that long. Mm-hmm. I promise you, if it was 35, I could have told you it was 35 minutes.
Yeah.
So kudos to them. And, look, Skaggs, Huckabee, all the people that are involved in all that kind of stuff. Great job.
Yeah. So that's the independent wrestling market in Georgia continues to get more crowded and more crowded and more crowded. What are you going to do to set yourself apart? Like Nick said, different than, better than, less than. What are you going to do? And I feel like I get excited about that. How is this going to be different? And if I'm being 100% honest, I'm most often let down by, well, this was just the same old, same old. This was just, you recorded a match, you added commentary, you threw it up, but there was nothing special about it. There was nothing. And I'm not saying don't post individual matches. I like individual matches, but what story are you telling? Is there a promo? Is there if it's just a match, nobody can. If it's just a match, it's like an NFL preseason game. Nobody cares. Mm-hmm. Make me care. Give me something to invest in. And these promotions are doing a great job doing it. So anything else I feel like we do pretty good notes, and then there's always something that comes to mind that we're like, oh, we should talk about this.
Well, we don't typically figure a video is going to come in mid-show that I've got to talk about, so stuff like that. So so appreciate that. I appreciate that. That was really cool to get mid-show. So and how professional was it me just to jump in and cut our show in all the pieces and say, hey, speaking of which, this has happened. No, I was kidding.
No, listen, hey, if they sent this, they just happened to get it in when we were recording. If it had been an hour later, it wouldn't have made it. So
actually, I do want to say this because I know we've asked, and so we got to be fair to the promotions. Your schedule for the next few weeks is a little hectic, so we're recording Sunday mornings, or early Sunday at some point. So I look, it does create a little bit of a challenge for them, especially if they run Saturday night.
Right.
Look, I have look, my phone goes, I put it in sleep mode. My phone don't ring overnight.
Right.
I tell the kids if they need anything, they call my wife, not me. Because I get too many messages between Facebook Messenger or whatever. So you can send me your stuff at 2 a.m. By the way, it happens. There's plenty of times I wake up and there's emails or there's messages or whatever. So kudos, if I can have that before we record, we'll get it into the notes. But it is, I'm just being honest with everybody. Like, I know, kudos to Viral. Literally, like, hey, let me know. I'll get you these later today. My response was, dude, we're recording in an hour. And bam, it was there. I had everything. So we appreciate those guys. We just know we want to be honest. I don't want people next week to send it to me Sunday afternoon. Hey, here you go, buddy. And I'm like, yeah, and we recorded this morning. So for the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing Sunday morning. So by the way, It's also why you would want to be a Patreon or a YouTube member, because you're going to get the episode Sunday. As soon as we're done, I'll upload it, and then it'll drop on Tuesday in its regular slot. So you'll actually have it a couple days early. So anyway.
Yeah, there we go. There's so many reasons to join and support the show. Don't forget, we don't mention this enough. Go to Pro Wrestling Tees and buy a T-shirt. That's another way to support the show as well. But listen, fans, we wouldn't be doing this without you. We are so grateful for all of your support. We're so grateful for everybody that watches and sends us a message and says thank you. It makes it truly, truly worthwhile. But for Nick McDaniel, this has been Heath Mulligan, and we're so excited to see you at the matches.